Have you been playing guitar a while but can't seem to get on with writing songs? Maybe you've tried a few major key ideas, but they all sound boring and predictable. In this video, I'll show you 6 chords that changed how I write music on the guitar and can help you to instantly inject drama and emotion into your progression. Writing a major key song can feel a bit like having a straitjacket on. You're desperately trying to break free, but instead you feel stuck and limited in your expression. What you need is a simple way to introduce something beyond the 7 chords of the key. This is where the idea of borrowed chords comes in. Borrowed chords, modal mixture, modal interchange. These terms all mean the same thing. We're going to take a chord from one key and use it in a different key. The most common way to do this is to borrow chords from the minor key and use them in a major key progression. To be more specific, you take chords from the parallel natural minor key. Parallel keys have the same root or starting note. For example, G major and G minor are parallel keys. So if we were writing a progression in the key of G major, we would be using the 7 chords on screen. And if you're borrowing from G minor, then you have these 7 additional chords. Using the minor 1 chord can become difficult and make things confusing. So you have 6 new chords to try in your major key progression. Now let's explore these 6 chords and how they can change the way that you write music on the guitar. First up is a chord type that you might not have considered before, but it actually provides some great tension that your progressions might be missing: the diminished chord. In minor keys, the 2 chord is a diminished triad. So in our example, G minor key, this is the A diminished chord. Most commonly, you'll hear this played as a minor 7 flat 5 chord, also known as a half diminished chord. When used in the parallel major key, it introduces the flat 6 note. In this next example, I'll play the A diminished 2 chord and resolve it with the 1 G major chord. Minor 7 flat 5 chords have an interesting property. If you play them in first inversion, then you create a minor 6th chord. If you want to learn more about the reasons why this is, I'll link a video at the end of this one. In our example, the A minor 7 flat 5 chord, played in first inversion, becomes C minor 6. This is like a minor 4 chord, which we'll look at in more detail later. For now, have a listen to how it sounds when resolving to the 1 chord G major. The 2 diminished chords' main use is as a predominant. This means it can play a role in the variation of the classic 2-5-1 progression. Here's how that could sound in the key of G major. If you're looking at borrowed chords and trying to connect them to real songwriting, it's easy to get lost in all the options available. That's exactly why I send a free weekly newsletter to thousands of guitarists, breaking down songwriting concepts in a clear and practical way. If you want to write better songs with more confidence, then head to writeonguitar.com or click the link in the description and sign up today. Moving on, and the second chord that changed how I write music on the guitar is the flat 3 chord. The flat 3 chord has a power and impact to it that is unmistakable. This chord brings the flat 3rd note to the major key, which is part of the reason why it sounds so dramatic. Have a listen to it in this G major key example. The flat 3 also works well with the 4 chord, as you can hear in this next G major key example. Now let's look at one of the most popular and emotional borrowed chords, the minor 4. We had a preview of this chord with the inverted 2 minor 7 flat 5. This heartbreaking chord is great when moving back to the 1 tonic. This move is called a minor plagal cadence. That's because 4-1 is known as the plagal cadence. You'll often hear the minor 4 right after the standard 4 before moving back to 1. This provides a pleasing comparison between the 2 4 chords, which heightens the emotion. Here's how that sounds in the key of G major. You can also use the 4 minor 6 chord that we saw earlier to alter the sound of minor plagal cadence. This is then sometimes called the Hollywood cadence. Here's how it sounds in the key of G major. You can also lead into the Hollywood cadence by using the borrowed flat 6 chord. We'll look at this chord in detail a little later, but for now, Listen to the sound it brings with this G major key example. Next up is probably the most surprising of the borrowed chords. The major 5 chord, also called the dominant chord, is an essential part of major key harmony. It creates tension that wants to be resolved, and when the 1 chord is played after it, this is fully achieved with what is known as the perfect cadence. So when the expectation of the major 5 chord is broken by using the borrowed minor 5 chord, we have a noticeable melancholy. Part of the pool of the major 5 chord is the 3rd note. This is the leading tone of the key. In our G major key examples, this is F sharp. This is just half a step below the root note of the key G. When you play the minor 3rd, this note is played half a step lower. So now the flat 3rd note has to move a whole step. This removes a lot of the tension and strength of the resolution when it is heard. Have a listen to the difference in this next example. You can use more than one borrowed chord in a progression. We saw a glimpse of that earlier, and I'll show you another one in a second. Just be aware that using several in a row without moving back to diatonic chords, and particularly the one tonic chord, can lead to it feeling like you've changed key, or at least a sense of ambiguity or confusion for the listener. This is something that can be exploited by an experienced songwriter, but if you're a bit newer to writing songs, I'd recommend just sprinkling in the borrowed chords to add some tension or drama in selected locations. In the next example, I'll use minor 5 and minor 4 chords to add a real minor flavour to this G major key progression. Now we'll look at the flat 6 chord. We had a glimpse of this a bit earlier, playing a role in the Hollywood cadence. Here it stands alone, with its ability to add uplifting wonder to a progression. Have a listen to it in this G major key example. The flat 6 chord works well as a predominant before the major 5. This is a common move in minor keys, so it will sound familiar. Here's how that sounds in the key of G major. The flat 6 brings 2 notes across to the major key, the flat 3 and the flat 6. These accidentals are part of the reason why this chord has such a distinctive sound. It also pairs nicely with the next chord we're going to look at, the flat 7. Flat 7 is a comfortable chord to play in major keys. Part of the reason for this is that it only introduces one accidental, flat 7. Listen to how well this resolves up to the one tonic chord with this G major key example. In minor keys, flat 7 chords are often played as dominant sevenths. As such, you might hear them played this way when borrowed into major keys for an interesting backdoor cadence. Here's how that sounds in the key of G major. As discussed a moment ago, flat 7 is often paired with flat 6. This creates a commonly used cadence that is great for a triumphant ending to a song. It has many names, one of which is the Mario cadence, because of its use in the original game. Here's how it sounds in the key of G major. At this point, it's worth briefly discussing what you would do if you are soloing or playing a melody over borrowed chords. There are a couple of ideas that are often used in this situation. The first one is to continue to use the major scale from the key that you're using, but just use the 1 or 2 notes that are introduced from the borrowed chord. For example, look at this simple 1-4 minor 4 progression in the key of G major that is on screen. Over the first 2 chords, I play the same musical idea. Then I repeat it a 3rd time over the borrowed C minor chord, but this time I play E flat from the underlying C minor chord. This doesn't sound out of place because it is in the chord. This technique is really powerful and widely used. Let's have a listen to it now. Alternatively, you could take a more extreme approach and completely switch scale over the borrowed chord. So you'd go from using the major scale to then using all notes from the relevant minor scale. This creates a greater contrast, but the dramatic effect can be really pleasing. I'll repeat the same chords again, but this time just play through all the notes in the G major scale over G and C, before switching to the parallel G minor scale over the minor 4 chord. Have a listen to that now. Putting everything we've learnt together, I'm going to play you a short fingerstyle example that I've written. Listen out for the chords and ideas that I've shown you throughout this video, and then have a go at writing your own music with some borrowed chords. You've seen that borrowed chords can introduce tension and drama, and the most impactful of these is the diminished 2 chord. The problem for most guitarists is that they've never encountered these amazing chords before. Watch the video on screen to learn all about them and how to use them in your music.